Our next session is called Finding New Audiences, the Role of Internet in Indie Music. And we have a brilliant range of musicians joining us as speakers and moderators. Let me introduce the moderators of this panel. Band members of Feathers in Space, an indie pop duo, Radhika Mohite and Darren D'Souza. Darren works as an associate business analyst and is currently pursuing his master's in creative music production at Catalyst Institute Berlin. Radhika is a freelance book editor and also teaches creative writing English and French and loves to play ukulele. Over to you, Radhika and Darren. We look forward to an exciting session.
Thank you, ma'am, for the lovely introduction. Radhika and I are proud to be back here at Symbiosis International University, our home for 4 years where our musical journey began, and to be part of this literary festival. Firstly, I would like to introduce to us all today here Tushar Mathur. So Tushar is a one-man army who I had the delight of meeting last weekend and this weekend, and he's a self-taught R&B musician, music teacher, music curator, and internet entrepreneur with over 400,000 streams on music that he wrote, composed, produced, and released himself. He has a deep-rooted passion for understanding the economics of creative industries and firmly believes that with the right tools, namely the internet, one does not need to be a starving artist anymore. In 2020, Tushar co-founded Lazy Frenzy, which is an independent music curation platform that owns Spotify playlists with over 90,000 followers. In his free time, he runs Grease Release, a company he started to help musicians globally to understand the business of music better and to take the careers to the next level without depending on anyone else. To grab his attention quickly, offer him a steaming hot plate of biryani, and he's all yours for the next 7 minutes. I'm hoping to employ that today. And Radhika.
We have Sanyant Naroth next with us. He is best known for his work with the soul pop sensation Easy Wanderlings. He is the singer and songwriter and composer for this band. He has also produced works of art for artists like Mali, Feathers in Space, and A Dog Without a Bone. Having worked with him personally, I think it was a very eye-opening experience because he did elevate what we already had to a whole nother level, and it does show with the response that our EP also got because of your expertise and all your help. So I mean, amazing. Thank you for that. And he is also a music director. He has scored for the Netflix original series called a movie called Upstarts in 2019. And he has done some cutting edge work for campaigns with Bajaj, Cadbury Dairy Milk, Godrej, and Bumble as well. So, yeah.
And next up, we have Sharad Rao. So Sharad is a performing and studio recording guitarist, vocalist, and bassist, and has worked in multiple live and studio projects with artists like Ragini Tandon, who has over 400 million views on YouTube, Dog Without a Bone, Vicky and Tejas, Mali, and a host of other upcoming indie artists. He is also, alongside Sanyant, the lead guitarist of internationally recognized soul band Easy Wanderlings, and has also worked on the Netflix film Upstarts, on which he was a session guitarist. It's been a pleasure to have met you all today, and I would like to invite Radhika to start the session for us.
So welcome to all our panelists, all our listeners who are here today. And so just to let you know for the structure of this session, the last 10 minutes we'll leave open for audience questions. You could send them in on the chat on this Zoom call if you'd like, and Darren and I can read them out at the end. Or if there is time, then we can always have you unmute and ask our panelists yourselves. So that will be for the latter half. So to begin with, I actually wanted to know your personal journey with growing. You've been putting music out for a while now, and you have witnessed and been a part of this growth for your band individually. How has the journey been for you so far with Easy Wanderlings and with you, Tushar, as well, for this whole global presence that you're getting with social media? So I think we could begin with Tushar.
Hey, firstly, thanks for having me here. Yes, you can get my attention with a steaming hot plate of biryani. Yes. Darren, I'm looking at you.
Next weekend, hopefully.
Next weekend. Okay. So, I started playing music with my band back in college. I think it was school. So that was a long time back, maybe about 7, 8 years back. I was in a band called Rock Paper Scissors. We used to play a lot of blues rock and all of that. And then I moved to Bangalore and started playing some R&B music. I started getting into Tom Misch, FKJ, all these other artists. I started listening to different kinds of music. So I started putting out music on my own. So it's been a journey from starting a band, doing all these gigs, shows, and now I'm sort of releasing music on my own, producing and writing and all of that. So yeah, it's been quite a journey, and yeah, I have about 3 songs out now, and I'm currently working on some more music at the moment.
Nice. That's good to hear. Okay, and what about Easy Wanderings? How has it been for you guys so far?
So far, what? I mean, we started off in 2000, late 2015, and then we started off as an incognito band, and then wanted to focus on the music aspect of it rather than us individuals. And now there are 8 band members. We've launched one album, an EP is out now. A second EP is going to be launched, and yeah, interesting ride so far. Yeah, and if you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, just what you said. 5 years. It's been 6 years now since we started, and since that time, the different tools we've used to kind of grow. The one thing that was constant was social media, the internet, and I think the way we've used it through the years has changed based on trends we've seen, and we've noticed healthy growth using platforms like Instagram and Facebook and all of those. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So, cool. So, okay, so when you say social media, we sort of think of, like, the first thing that comes to my mind is just Instagram, basically. But we have Instagram, we have Facebook, Twitter also. So, I mean, for you guys, Easy Wanderlings, like, are you guys more Instagram heavy, or how has that part of your strategy for
because what, 5 years ago, it was, I mean, Facebook was the thing a little bit for us, at least. And the thing is, it's crazy because all 8 of us, none of us really are good with social media. I wish at least one, gave a damn about. But at that point, we started posting on Facebook because some of us had Facebook accounts, and the rest of us didn't bother about Instagram at all, which was a big mistake because now Facebook is gone, and then we're like, oh my god, okay, let's focus on Instagram. And now, it's crazy. Now tomorrow something else will come up, and by the time we build our Instagram thing, Instagram is dead, and we're like, oh no, it's something else. And then so it's just. It's a weird scene, but we're just trying to catch up and trying to, stay relevant. But yeah, you see that there is a shift. And I use Twitter only to find contacts that I need, the journalists or whatever who, are relevant to understand what's going on. That's my purpose of Twitter. I don't really contribute by adding my thoughts on the world via Twitter. It's just a platform for me to find information and people to reach out.
And that's an important point as well. It is important to reach out to these people. As I remember during our time recording for the band as well, for the space, this is one of the biggest piece of advice that we got from you, is to reach out to these different music blogs or different radio stations as well, and that really can help boost the reach that you have to different audiences.
Yeah,
I agree there. I mean, Instagram, same for me, is I think I use Instagram the most. I don't use any other platform, but like he said, social media platforms can die. I think it was Orkut back then. I think it was MySpace before that, Facebook, Instagram. So I personally like the idea of having your own website and getting people to come on your website so they can sign up for a newsletter or something of that sort. So you can always get in touch with them later, because email addresses pretty much stay for life. So I like to capture that data so that, anytime I do a show later or anything of that sort, I can always send an email to an audience. Maybe if I segregate my email list based on city or, anything of that sort, I can send it to these people in these cities, and, things like that. So anytime I release music, I send emails to these guys. Now, email marketing might sound old, but it works better than most because on Instagram, being organic, getting organic engagement right now is very difficult. They keep changing the algorithm. So unless you want to dance all the time, it's harder to get in front of people. So
Right.
yeah, I think Instagram is a great tool, but there are also different things like the whole website thing, which I personally use.
Right.
Cool. Good to know.
Yeah.
Actually, that's quite interesting because when it comes to like reaching new audiences, also, I think Darren, would you like to bring up the point that we spoke about TikTok?
Yes, yeah. So we were actually speaking about this earlier as well, about how we all know we have the world has this like love and hate relationship with TikTok at the moment, where people are very against it or like very for it. But I think internationally it's helped a lot of music reach places it wouldn't have otherwise. Songs we have probably heard around today, for example, say Lil Nas X is probably around due to something like TikTok. And I was actually wondering how do you guys think that Indian artists are probably missing out on this opportunity to reach a more global audience due to our banning of TikTok? I mean, what do you think that impact is, Tushar, onto you?
Yeah, so I think TikTok is a great platform, and from what I've read online, that's probably one of the algorithm works very well because Instagram. The problem with Instagram is there's too many things going on there. So you have reels, you have posts, you have DM, you have a lot of stuff. But TikTok is literally one for you page. That's all. That's all there is. So all you got to do is just keep swiping down, right?
Right.
So that way, they've sort of figured out, the algorithm, and people have seen tremendous amount of growth on TikTok. So I think it is still a little cringy, but there's a lot of artists who are putting out good, interesting stuff on TikTok, which is seeing a lot of traction. So I think we're definitely missing out on something because of TikTok not being there.
Right.
And a lot of artists have really blown up because just one song, one reel can sort of make like a
Yeah.
huge difference because it just amplifies like as if you go with it. But
Yeah.
just to clarify for our audiences, do you have a social media manager Easy Wanderlings and Tushar, or is it you guys only?
Is it just you
Uh,
guys? So,
it's
Yeah.
it's us only, but we do get advice from other creators.
right.
But we are very like, at least, I mean, we've started, to be honest, just like since the last 2 years only we started really giving a lot more interest to it. And but I think in the last year we've actually sat and figured out. I mean, at least we are taking it very seriously. We have a proper meeting and figuring out what kind of content needs to go on. So
Yeah.
it's a, yeah. I mean, it's a almost a football team. So there's 8 of us, so we can like, it's a proper board meeting. So
Right. Yeah. So the basketball team with some three
yeah,
subs.
yeah.
Which is also a great segue to our next question, which is basically about how much do you plan these things? So sometimes, for example, Tushar, you as well. I've seen your website is very quirky. It's got some stuff that's a little more personal and private, as well as some that's a little more, I guess, like built up. But in terms of like planning these out, is this also something that you do like impromptu? For example, Sunny also does a deal of you with your like Hadley fractured, just pretty
Yeah.
funny. So it's a mixture of these two. So how do you kind of like aim to find that balance? Is there like a schedule you guys have, or is it a little more free flowing?
So yeah, so for me personally, I'm not a big fan of concept posting every day or every other day. So every time I have a release, I have like a proper strategy set in place. So that's basically what it is. So before that, I just put out some guitar videos of me singing or maybe playing some guitar or something of that sort.
Right.
But when it comes down to my releases, I plan it down to the T. So I have like a 1 month strategy in place that okay, every day this post goes up, this post goes up, just to promote the single. So if I don't, I look at it as social media as a promotion tool, like nothing beyond that. I'm not a big fan of posting selfies or doing stuff like that. It's purely for promotion. So anytime I have something to promote, I use social media, and the other times I just sometimes put out a few videos here and there.
I think for us, it's at least like Sunny said in the past year, it's been a lot of planning and a lot of not too much of the improv situation. Because the way we look at it is we don't like Tushar said, we don't really enjoy putting out narcissistic content or
Like
any of
dance
these
videos and
At the
hey,
yeah.
and that talk to your dog
Yeah.
and see how it feels or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just we're not those that we it's that's not us.
Yeah.
So
That being said, there are some you can choose to be. Okay, I don't want to be that person. I don't want anything to do with that. I'm okay with this many followers and just like 5 to 10 followers coming in every month, and that's fine. If you're cool with that, awesome. But if you want that massive reach, you're gonna have to understand what trends are kicking around. How much can you take out of that? You don't have to completely change yourself and dance like a fool, but maybe okay, I like that dancing fool video. Maybe I won't do it naked. I'll do it with my clothes on.
how much are you willing to give?
How
right?
much?
Like,
Yeah. How much are you willing to compromise for a certain result?
And we've seen this happen with artists that who are our friends. For example, Hanita Bambi, right? I remember she reaching out to us before she got out even her first single, saying that, hey, please help me with spreading the music. I'm just launching my single next month. And she's just one woman team, right? And I saw her when she had when like 100 followers on Instagram, and then she started talking to her fans, doing all these things. I'm like, man, I can never do that. But every day, aaj hai, kaisa feeling and all that, whatever. And then I'm just like, but she kept doing it often. Like she's such and it's narcissistic content along with her fans love it, right? And then and like mammoth growth, and now
Mammoth.
like huge growth,
Yeah.
and we know that everything she's doing is right, except do you want to do it, right?
Yeah.
And she's achieved now it's way more than us, like her
Yeah.
growth, like she's got like 2 times the amount of followers, but she's doing something right, and she's a go-getter. And so you have to be smart enough to do it the right way. So
Yeah.
and so what we've done right now in the past 2-3 months is that we've figured out, okay, this many posts we are putting out, not like every day or minute. We put out whatever 8 to between 8 to 12 posts.
12, and it's a specific day at a specific time and monitoring it.
Okay.
Right. And what we've realized is the videos where we sit and write these insane chords and like put on a string section and nice outside video and all gets jack. And a video of Jessica throwing an orange at my head got like a massive amount of views. And that's the reality. And you can decide against that and be like, no, I'm gonna be just this music person and put out only music content, but be aware of what it's going to get you.
Yeah, like that wheelchair thing. I mean, like me, by the way, I have my crutches and I'm just like, whatever. So I am trying to walk, and I was like, hey, you know what? Why don't you go to this thing, elevator, and, try be mean to me? And then, though it was scripted, and like that thing got a lot more views. And I'm just like, wow, this thing is a really strange world. Sadistic, weird content is doing much better than the musical stuff that we put so much energy into creating videos, this and all. That's getting such less views and interaction. So it's, you have to understand what works in this space. It's not perfection, it's not the most amazing visual effect that you can put. It's most relatable content, I think, works much better.
Yeah, I think just to add on to that, I think that's a great point. I mean, as long as you're comfortable in doing all of this stuff, it's great. But the flip side is you might not be able to do this for a continued period of time, because you might get burnt out at the end because you're just not that person, right? You're just
Yeah.
not the kind of guy who wants to keep doing this. So the other way you could possibly potentially grow your audience is if you start advertising maybe one reel which is done really well. Let's say the orange throwing one, right? Let's say that did really well. So you could possibly advertise it on your reels or on stories or something of that sort. Maybe like 200 rupees a day or something can put you in front of a lot of people. So that's also a way to look at it, that you don't necessarily have to keep putting out stuff like this every day if you're not comfortable with it. If you are comfortable with it, great, go for it. You can engage with your audience and all of that. But if you're not, then this is another way you could possibly grow.
For sure, man. I think we were lucky to meet some really interesting people in the social, in like just marketing industries, and we got a few tips. And one of those tips is when you pay for advertising on Instagram, they recognize you as a paying customer, right? And if that is not regular, right, if you don't have a specific regular monthly input of money for your ads, they've already recognized you as a paying customer. They cut off your supply to your audiences. So there are two ways of going about it. Be a regular paying person, which is worth it, $200, or even if you put aside 1,000 rupees a month, right, and you make sure it's every month, then this strategy works. But if you're working on it post based and random based, that's when it might not really work for
Because
you.
we saw that trend happen to us, and we are like, oh my god, like mind blown. Because we did spend money on Instagram, and I think it's important to market yourself. And like you said, like a month before any release, month and a half itself, we start planning out the kind of stuff. So the release plan is on point. But then we put money out on certain periods of time, and then we realized that after that our performance is going down drastically, the amount of people it's reaching, whatever is happening. Now I don't know to what extent that's on us, but we've noticed that. And then there were other experts who are geeks about this and who had a chat with us recently, and they were like, this is what's happening. And so he's like a my way or the highway kind of guy, so I don't know to what extent I should take his word. But he was like, listen, no feeding the system unless you know how to work with it. So if you're going to keep feeding it a small amount of time, work with it, then good. Otherwise it's all like they are going to know that you are a paying customer, and you need to, otherwise they're going to, it's whatever. Shut you off pretty much.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting. So then the takeaway from like this discussion was basically like maintaining your authenticity to help you be consistent in sort of keeping your audience engaged with who you are and what you're putting out. But so I wanted to ask Tushar this specifically. So you talk about how not all artists have to be starving artists. And as a fellow artist, that made me feel really nice because I think learning how to monetize on your craft is very important. So with what you're doing, you're not restricting. I mean, this talk is also about how the internet is sort of influencing your reach to new audiences. So the internet is also like Spotify and Apple Music, and it's more than just social media. So if you could just talk about how any artist out there listening to this conversation could maybe try to strategize and monetize on their craft with what you are specifically doing as well.
All right. So I guess one of the most basic things most musicians go for is teaching, right? Because after you learn how to play an instrument, you're like, okay, I can probably teach, get a few students and do all of that. Yeah. So the thing about teaching is, now if you do get a bunch of students, everyone is mostly free in the evenings, right? So you can probably squeeze in maybe 2 hours of class or 3 hours of class, and you can do that for the entire week. Great. But after a point, then your days start getting packed. You can't get more people on board. And that's where the internet could, possibly help you out. Is if, let's say, you could, if you're taking on like basic students who are starting from scratch, you could possibly record certain sections of your classes and send it over to them, and then maybe sit with them at the end of the class and just do a little quick revision. So this way you can possibly bring in more income, or you could do things like that. So there's just so many different ways the internet can enable us to do multiple different things in the stuff we're already doing, right? So you could potentially think of ideas like this. So another couple of ideas is, I know a lot of my friends do this. What they do is they advertise their music to different countries using Facebook ads, Instagram ads, and they advertise in a way. Let's say you're from India, you advertise it to India, and they figure out a good cost per click. I don't want to get too deep into the whole metrics and everything, but they figure out a good rate to advertise to a certain country. Let's say it's India, and while they're advertising, because Facebook is so smart, it keeps learning and your ad costs keep reducing. At the end of the day, you're practically making the money you spend on advertising back in royalties, right? So there's also a way you can do this. You can advertise to different countries and you could potentially make your money back. And I know people are actually doing this, and this way you can get in front of a bigger audience because you're constantly advertising and you can make the royalty money back. Now, royalty money might seem super low, like it's absolutely nothing, but in the grand scheme of things, little by little you can potentially make that money back and get a bigger audience. So this is another way you could potentially monetize or start making more money using the internet. Another way would be to start building your own playlists. So that's what I do with my company, Lazy Frenzy. So we grow playlists, and we've grown them using ads and all of that stuff, and organic marketing and keywords and all those other things. And then artists get in touch with us to submit music to us. So we're part of different platforms. So these are third-party platforms where you can get on as a curator, and then artists can come on that platform and then submit music to your playlist for a small fee, right? So this fee is about maybe $1, $2, and it's not much, but it adds up. When you get like 50, 100 submissions a day, it really adds up to something. And this can help keep you afloat and bring in constant recurring income. So with something like the pandemic happening, if it does happen again, then a lot of musicians are going to get screwed, right? There's not going to be income. If a lot of musicians are relying on playing gigs to make money, then they're not going to make that money anymore. So there are different ways like this which you can use to start making money on the internet.
Right. That's a good segue about like reaching wider global audiences as well.
Yeah.
Into I actually had a conversation with Sharad when he was in Goa a few months ago, and we were speaking about how the fact that you're reaching a global audience also means that there's a certain focus on elements such as how your sound quality is, how your mixing quality is, how your mastering quality is. And we were speaking about how bands like Oasis or John Mayer also have attained that very attention to detail in these aspects as well. And it's a question to you guys about how much does that does the fact that you're reaching wider audiences now that the larger amount of the world is hearing music make you want to focus on those details about getting the mix spot on, getting certain elements cutting through, and having the master perfect for different output systems, etc.
I think right from the beginning, that was our concern. Right from album number one all the way. And I think that's any artist concern. Like, we want the best, but maybe being aware of how to get the best is a problem.
Right.
No artist saying, okay, I'm cool if the song doesn't sound that great, but as long as it's out there and people can listen, I'm happy. But the thing is, I feel like with the whole streaming culture and the way music can be made cheap and easy, that quality has obviously dropped because there's no check, right? There's no quality check anywhere. You can sit in your bedroom, you can pay like $10 to get on through an aggregator to get on Spotify and Apple and all of these things, and the quality is obviously going to be, pardon my language, shit, right? Because you've got people who are spending lakhs in setting up a studio and treating it for a reason, right? The sound is obviously better there because they are treating it a certain way. And it's kind of like a paradox because yes, there is now no quality check, but also the way we consume music is different, and people don't need that high quality anymore. A general audience does not. They're listening to it on their phones, they're listening to it on their OK headphones. They don't need the best quality, So it's kind of a confusing place to be at. Do you spend lakhs and get the best quality for people who are not going to appreciate it? Or, okay, I'm going to try and get OK quality because that's all it kind of takes.
Right.
And for us, I think that answer is there is going to be a 2%, whether they're industry people or just extreme music enthusiasts, who are going to care if your quality is high. And those 2% are super important because they're the ones who are going to get you those big gigs or those big deals, And
I think you have one shot to release something legendary, something that is going to surpass your times, right? So I think we want to do our best, right, and get the best quality. Forget how people are going to react to it. But at the same time, now given the rise of bedroom producers, there are some excellent quality bedroom production happening, and sometimes so good, right? But so you just need to understand how it works.
Yeah.
It's not like everyone needs to. If it works, if it suits your kind of music, you do it in a bedroom, but it will still sound world class. So that's the two sides to it.
Right. So Tushar, one of your main inspirations you mentioned is Tom Misch, who kind of started off as almost like a bedroom producer. Same with FKJ, like very like live session oriented. So what are your thoughts on that as well? I would say.
I think as an artist, if you're happy with, I mean, personally, I want it to be the best quality, right? But I can't really look down on people who are not putting out the best quality, according to my opinion, because like you said, Tomish recorded everything back at home and it sounded great. I think the Black Keys recorded everything, their first album, on like an old broken tape recorder or something. So at this point, like he mentioned, we're in a strange place. We really don't know what works and what doesn't. Like anything could work, absolutely anything could work, and it could become viral tomorrow. So so I as an artist, if you're happy with the quality, then I think that's all that matters.
Yeah, that's thank you, Tushar, for that. We're actually going to ask you guys, since you're in this ecosystem of being in India, and we have quite a niche of being indie artists, I guess. So there are chances where perhaps Tushar, you and I have met. Radhika, of course, we've both met Sharad and Saniyat before, and there's a lot of chances to kickstart these small collaborations as well. And social media has allowed that to happen on like a much larger scale. So I'm sure you guys have probably seen other indie producers that you've been fans of. And I was wondering if you guys have had chances to collaborate with such people or maybe even exchange ideas, something as simple as that. And what has the experience been with social media and those aspects of it?
You want to talk?
Sure. I mean, collaborations are really the way to go, I think, now, whether it's, an actual, whether it's on Instagram or whether it's collaborating on, just another release, because that's really going to help you grow, whether it's on Spotify, get into, like, for example, we were supposed to collaborate with an artist, a soul artist in the US from a band called The Suffers. And even why is obviously her tonality works for the song, but when you work with somebody from that space, then her fans are going to hear it, then the labels who are signing her will hear it, music enthusiasts over there are going to hear it, radio promoters are going to hear it. So it's one way to just get your marketing base like pretty much sorted in that space. That's your, in one way, right? Your name, whether they hear your music or at least they've seen, something. There's some sort of seed planted there, right? And even like the way right now, it's crazy because you type easy one links, and this similar artists are going to be local trained or things like that. I'm like that they don't sound nothing like us, and that's because we are in India and Indian Spotify groups us with Indian artists, right? But doesn't mean that and so it's a really weird box. So if you want to break out of that, then you have to kind of collaborate with people from around the world so that you're opening up borders. So that is one. And I think yes, we did. I mean, we are constantly writing to people, and whether it's big artists or artist managers or anyone. So people who we have obviously looked up to and listened to their music almost every other day. We have reached out to them. We've shared intel and whatever, and yeah, it's definitely doable. World is a much more smaller place, and you might think that they won't respond, but people out there, they will, like, at least
a lot of them do.
Yeah. So yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. So I think I've released from like Tushar Mathur, I've released 3 songs, and all 3 of them have some sort of collaboration or the other. So I mean, I completely believe in collaborations, and I think like he said, your marketing is also sort of it's going in a good direction, because for my latest single I collaborated with a Mumbai based rapper called Shayan Roy, and he has a pretty big following he was part of BuzzFeed or something else of that sort. So when you collaborate with somebody like that, it just pushes you to a completely new audience. right? Of course, the artist has to be good. I mean, if they fit the kind of music you're doing, but if you collaborate with someone and if they have a big following, a big audience, it's also easier to get other things done. So, with each of my releases, I sort of do like a giveaway. So for the latest one, I was doing, so if people pre-save my track and follow us on Instagram, they could potentially win a home studio bundle. So I was giving away a home studio bundle, and it was so much easier to get a brand to respond, because I was like, you know what, in total we have about 100,000 followers. So if you promote your brand via us, you can get in front of a lot more people and things like that. So collaboration just make things easier, especially if you're collaborating with somebody who has a lot of followers, or somebody who's active in the scene, or very active on Instagram and social media. So yeah, I totally agree with collaborations, and I'm actually collaborating for my upcoming track as well. So yeah.
Nice. That's really good to hear also. So I mean, for people who are listening also right now, so we've already spoken about a lot of the avenues that artists today can use, whether you are producing it on your own or whether you are going to a studio. For Easy Wanderlings, their home base is Grace Park, and for Tushar, you do produce most of your stuff on your own and you release music on your own as well. So what would be your first, like, what should be the first thing that an artist today should do when it comes to, they've got their music ready, everything's done, so now what would be the first thing that they should be doing in terms of getting it out there? Basic, what would you prioritize first?
The first thing would be to pick a distributor and get a release date in mind. So picking a distributor is not very hard. You can just Google, if you want to pick a distributor, just Google distributors Ari's take. So there's this guy called Ari Herstand. He does an extensive review of all the distributors. So see what works for you. See what price makes sense for you. Some distributors take a one-time fee, or some distributors take fee every year, or they take a royalty payout. And then get a release date in mind. Ideally, keep your release date at least a month later, so that you have enough time in that month to start promoting your release. So yeah, that's what I would say would be the first step when your song is ready.
Yeah, I'm pretty much
Exactly that.
Tushar, I think a month is for the distributor.
Yeah.
A little more than that for you, so that you can plan out, because last month is like the 11th hour. You just scrambling about, oh no, we need some clip for the reel. Oh no, we need something that. So make sure that you keep 2 months if you can, which is with musicians, good luck. And because there's so much work to do, like getting your music ready is just 50%. Then it's the other 50%. It's like a movie is being made, an excellent movie is being made, and then no one watches it. Like, and then you're just wondering, oh my God, people don't listen to good music anymore. What's going to help? But how is that going to work? Because you have to find out the right kind of people who can push you out, reach out to, find out, create a database of journalists, and keep radio, podcasts, all kinds of people you can reach out to. All this is you. You have to do it. Like, you're not signed. You don't have.
No one's gonna do it for you for the first 3-4 years, and you shouldn't expect anyone to either.
Yeah. So you have to be super open your Google Sheets, all that. Start taking down notes, and tell your teammates to help out. But these have to be done. Otherwise, you're going to be stuck in a space where you can't grow. You're just going to keep releasing, and there's going to be just a small amount of people who's going to listen to you. That's about it.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think with Feathers in Space also we had the same sort of dilemma as any artist. I think when the time comes for you to promote your work, it's always something that's, I mean, there's an ambivalence to it also, because you're like, I have to sort of just sell this one thing which I have made from a different space, and then you're sort of putting it out there in a commercial capacity, and that's sort of like a little bit of a struggle. So I mean, apart from the very obvious logic that nobody else is going to do it for you, did you guys struggle with this as well? Like, was it like a, I mean, I'm sure it wasn't a smooth transition. Like, it was a struggle to sort of get to a place where you're okay, or like you're able to push yourself, I have to make this reel. You said you have a schedule, decide like 12 posts or whatever.
Correct. I mean, that's just Instagram. I'm saying just throughout, like, listening street, because I think whoever's following us are also wanderlings, and like we have a really tight knit community, which includes you guys, so we feel like, and we've grown that community so well that our fans anyway share and connect with anything that we do. So I think the super fan community of ours is quite solid, and so we've taken a good enough time to build that gradually. And the second thing is that I love doing it. I'm a marketing guy and I love reaching out to people. Every other day, I'm writing emails, building connections. So that comes naturally to me, and yeah, so it's something that I enjoy doing. So you need to find that person in you, and you won't feel like it's a lot of work. Sometimes I send out like 30 emails in all day, and it's just, and out of that, one person might respond. So, but it's worth it because, like, even for the South by Southwest thing, the Lumineers manager, no, who was it? The Lumineers engineer?
Luminous.
Yeah, it's a producer. He had reached out and then said we'd love to have you in the studio or whatever. We'd love to come watch. So you never know from which angle. We're like, oh my god, what is he doing listening to our music? But they are, and then it's crazy. So you never know from which angle it's going to come and help you out. So yeah, you gotta do what you gotta do.
Put yourself out there basically for all
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
I think the problem with most musicians is that they don't want to do it because most musicians want to just make the music. But sadly, it doesn't work like that. You have to put in the effort to push your music out there, market it. Now, you might not you might not like doing it, but you have to at least learn how to do it.
Correct.
That's very important. Now, you will probably never find somebody who can do it. So the best way for you to actually do it is to learn yourself and then probably hire somebody in the future to do all these menial tasks and small tasks which you don't want to do. Let's say you have to write 30 emails a day. Now you might not like writing 30 emails a day, but if you know who to write to, what to write, all you have to do is hire somebody, and you can give them the work, give them all these little tasks to do, because musicians want to make more music. Nobody wants to do the marketing part of it, but the problem is you have to do it. Now if you're lucky enough, you might like doing it, you might love doing it, you might love getting in touch with people and all that, but if you don't, it's totally fine, but at least learn how to do it. That's what I would say.
Right. No, definitely. I mean, even for us at that release as well, I think probably sending out to a lot of people also helped it gain traction onto a certain playlist. And that's probably a good next topic to also bring up, is that playlisting is now something that has become so strong in terms of building your followers, your listeners as well. And getting onto even like one or two editorial playlists for us has worked wonders, and for you guys as well has. So how do you think your approach is when it comes to probably aiming to get on these playlists? Tushar, you obviously do work with playlist curation as well. So what are your thoughts on?
I mean, I am completely for playlists because, of course, I'm in the business as well, the curation business. So besides getting on playlists, I'm also on the other side, which is curating them, which can also help musicians not be the starving broke musicians. So I think Spotify right now is only growing, and playlists are a huge part of a musician's career, because if they land on not even editorial playlists, so the problem with editorial playlists is sometimes it just might not land there. You just might not make it to an editorial playlist. So I mean, musicians shouldn't lose hope when they do that, because you can always get on user generated playlists, something which we do. And once you land on user generated playlists, Spotify usually looks at your streams and looks at how well your song is doing on the playlist, and then starts pushing you on other editorial playlists. So I think besides editorial playlists, it's also very important to get in touch with curators and try to land on their playlists. And I think the easiest way to get in touch with curators is by using all these third-party websites which bring on curators, and you can submit music to them for a small fee. So I think playlists play a huge role in today's music scene.
Sure, we have like websites such as
websites. There's SubmitHub, Groover. There's Playlist Push. There's a bunch of websites. So all you got to do is just search for music submission websites. There are a couple of free ones, but the problem with the free ones is curators don't pay much attention to it, because they would rather be on the other platforms like SubmitHub and everything else. So I think that's a great bet, to go on SubmitHub and start pitching your music to curators.
Sure.
I second that. I think, because that's something that you can do. Because Spotify, you have no control. You just like hope and pray, right? And then and yeah,
All four fingers crossed.
yeah. And then you just wait on the day of release. Oh, how many did I? And then so I mean, we've been lucky to have like gotten a lot of features even in the last 2 years. I mean, the last two singles. I think about some 30 odd editorial playlists, and we are like, and we thought it's a bug, and all our friends are calling, other artists are calling me. What did you guys do? We're like, hey man, I have no idea. Like, you know, so it, and then the thing is, they won't, and you, some of them you will last through it a longer duration. Some of them, you're like, for example, the new music Friday playlist would keep you on there for like 2 weeks. And, but what you can do is like submit it to, you know, platforms like Tushar's, where, you know, which you have the freedom to at least submit it to them. Now, whether if it fits their playlist, they'll feature it, and there's tons of them like that. So you can actually go through them, you know, via Groover or SubmitUp and then submit. I think that's a really good tool because you can reach the right audience and track them.
I mean, the 30 editorial playlist is absolutely insane. I want to know what you guys did.
Mind blowing.
I know, right?
Like, even we want to know.
And that night we were just sitting out and we were just looking at our Spotify artists. We're like, and I'm like, guys, come here. Like, what? Like, I'm like, France, there, some new country we haven't even heard of. Like, you know, so it's crazy.
I mean, that's absolutely crazy. So again, coming back to that, so you can either get really lucky or you can not get lucky at all. So that's where you know, user-generated playlists and all that comes into play. Because getting on 30 editorial playlists is insane, but I don't know if it's sustainable. You're not sure if you can do it again for your next release. That's going to be very
you
hard.
can't have any hopes.
There's
But in the case of getting in touch with curators, you know that, okay, this curator listens to my kind of music, and I've been getting I've been getting good streams every day. So if you can land on a playlist like that, great. So I think I would definitely recommend pitching to all these curators.
Awesome.
And you have to do it because there's no other way. If you want to really reach out to at least have the hopes of reaching to a lot of audience, you have to do this. You have to keep that amount, and it's not that expensive. It's just $2 to $3, and you have to keep that money aside, you know, and it's totally worth it.
Okay, so just a gentle reminder, we have 15 minutes left for our session. So if the audience could just send in their questions. We already have one from Bharat Kishore Mehra. So he says, what are your thoughts on keeping your personal and professional accounts on social media the same? I've started to release tracks this year, and that's working for me because I post regularly on my main account. So I don't want to force myself to post on my professional account. It's in the chat as well. I read it very fast, sorry.
Yeah. I'm just going through it once. I think I would personally do just one account. It's just easier to grow one account. I mean, unless you like posting your personal stuff, you know, you like posting a lot of stories, then keep that aside. But if you're not much of a poster, then just have one account and just post on that.
Yeah, I second that. Building one itself is driving me insane. Yeah. So, but I think it's equally important also to just see if you feel like you need to at least, like, for example, this guy has, like, we all just opened Instagram in the last 2 years, guys. Okay, by the way. So this guy has like 6 posts, and one of them is like 2 or 3 of them is just posters of like some gigs. I'm like, bro, like, can you just like post some videos, you know, of like, just say that show that you're a guitarist, you know? So because I mean, that's not him, you know, and he's still getting a lot of requests to perform for pretty much every other band that's in the area, right? And I'm like, without doing any of that through word of mouth and through the Easy One Links platform, others are also getting whatever, you know. So yesterday also, some lady called me, it's like, will you teach me singing? I'm like, no, I won't, but I know somebody who can. So then I would divert it to Pratika, right? And then, so that happens. So if you, like you said, so like Tushar said, I think if you do a good job in building one platform very well, it'll help you grow, you know, anyway. So
also for musicians, like, we don't have a LinkedIn, right? So I think this is sort of like the place where we can like compile all that we have to offer.
Correct.
Yeah. And if you can grow it to, let's say, 100 at K or 200 3, once you get into the influencer status, then you can get, then you're enough. That's another way of, kind of earning,
Monetizing.
right? So I think it's always good to at least try and get that. And you never know, your next post might be the one that gets it viral, right? So
Right.
it's okay to go the extra mile to just add that extra spark in your video or whatever, or your work. And you can't count on it, but if you can, why not, right?
Sure.
And second question, in terms of YouTube, I think it's excellent platform to do it, but for musicians, it might be a little more difficult. For example, our bassist Malay, sound engineer, so he and his girlfriend started a YouTube channel, and they started a year and a half ago, and now they have 90,000 subscribers.
Wow.
Yeah, in like a year, 90,000 subscribers. I'm like, yo, like why? And because that's a yoga channel, and he's always like, stand in front of that beach and do Surya Namaskar. Stand in front of that giant wheel and do a Surya Namaskar. So they kept doing that, and next thing you know, do it with your grandmom, and then so they're doing a grandmom yoga routine. So it's just constant content, but they can replicate it, and they can make it fresh, and so they've found a way, and they've had a really crazy growth. But for musicians, you have to, it's a little more challenging. So I don't know, I'd love to hear, Tushar, your perspective on growing your audience on YouTube.
Yeah, I actually have a different perspective on this. I mean, growing your own channel is very difficult, like you said. I mean, posting consistent videos every week, you got to think of something else other than music. You got to do something else. You got to maybe if you got to talk about mixing, mastering, or whatever else you like. But YouTube as a platform is great because if you can get in touch with YouTube music channels, people who post lyric videos and all that stuff, these guys have a massive reach. They have about 1 million subscribers. I personally work with a YouTube channel which has about 1 million subscribers, and all they do is post music, lyric videos, right? So the way they got popular is as soon as like a really famous song releases, they make a lyric video and put it up there. Right, you must have seen any new song, you go on YouTube and you put a lyric video, there's a lyric video there, right? And now they're using, so now people subscribe to the channel, and then they use this audience, and then they start pushing out other indie music. So you can, in this entire when they're getting like so many million views for this new song, your music can also be pushed out on the channel. So if you can get on YouTube channels like this, it's great. It's great because they mention your song link in the description, and you could potentially get thousands or 100,000 streams. Yeah.
And how does that, for example, work with royalty in terms of, because for Spotify, I know that you will get like people are listening to your song.
So a lot of curators, if you submit via a platform like SubmitHub also does this. So they some curators let you monetize it. Some curators do partial monetization, and some curators say that if you want to get on my channel, I keep all the money which coming in. Now, as an artist, if firstly, YouTube revenue isn't that much, but if you are getting that much of an exposure in front of like 1 million subscribers, and your video could potentially get 600,000-700,000 streams, so I figure it's a great way to go about it if you can get on one of these channels, and that way your music can be promoted.
For sure. And I agree with Tushar. Like, for example, when we started out, we did get featured in, a couple of these big, million subscriber, YouTube channels. But then I felt like, I felt a little like violated. I felt like, your job is just like creating stuff, just literally creating a lyric video and then putting out our song, and then you keep the money for the exposure. That word itself is so pissing off, but then it makes sense for an artist who's starting out, and obviously somebody or the other is anyway going to create a lyric video when you're growing, and now they'll put your video on like a travel video. That keeps happening to us all the time.
Yeah.
So you could use that extra push. I would say.
Yeah, but the YouTube content ID is so good. If you don't want to give them permission, it'll just automatically say that this song appeared here, and then your distributor will claim all the royalties. So if you don't like it, then you get the money either ways. And if you do like it, then good for both of you all, I guess. I mean, both the YouTube channel and the artist. So it depends on what you're going for. But yeah, YouTube as a whole is a great way. to land on other people's channels so you can grow your music. Also, another thing you could do is get in touch with vloggers. I mean, the vlogging scene is growing, and all these guys need music for transitions. All these guys need music for when something's happening. So if you can get in touch with people like this, they're always looking for music which again, coming back to that point, which doesn't get them demonetized. So you will have to let them keep all the revenue, but that way your music comes in a video. Let's say your video music comes in a Casey Neistat video. He's probably one of the biggest vloggers on YouTube. I mean, that's a big push for your music, and everyone keeps asking, what song is this in the comment section. So that's another way you could think about it.
The second question Jace has asked is, do you think making an album as a small artist is worthwhile?
I think it's the way you put it out. In general, if you're going to have say an 8-track album and you're going to release 5 tracks as singles, build up that kind of anticipation, have a really long, strong plan for it. Yeah, it could work, but it's especially if you're starting out, it's a lot of money to make an album. I mean, of course, there are people who can do it in their bedroom and do it well. For them, it won't make that much of a problem to make the album. But not that whole album culture is dying, at least from what I've observed. So if you're going to put out 2 singles, there's a stronger chance of more people listening to it than an album. But like we're thinking of putting out an album next, and this whole EP thing, for example, is what we're trying to get out of 5 years down the line. It's either singles or albums, because otherwise it's kind of in between. We're not really sure how to kind of work it.
Because album is almost like a signature too. It's solid, and it accounts to its. I feel like it's more richer, and so it's a much more stronger body of work, and
which you don't need to start with.
If you can, good.
If you can,
and
great.
if and I think a lot of people would like to put a lot of thought into how the album. It's almost like a proper storyboard of work, right? You put actually a lot of thought into how things flow into each other. It's a story almost, right? So if it means that much, I would say put it out as an album. But times have changed, so now you can release the album as singles, and then put out let's say 5 tracks as singles, and then 3 of them together, drop it together as part of this collection. So a bunch of our friends, like for example, Dhruv Vishwanath had done that last year, I think. And so that way, each single, at least these 5 of them, they have individual attention.
Yeah.
And they have a higher chance of getting into playlists because you can pitch them separately. And the third, and then the 3 songs when you put, then there also 1 extra song you can pitch it to Spotify against it. So and yeah, so that's the way I would recommend they drop an album out.
Do you think trying a lot of genres hinders your growth as an artist? So many styles.
I mean, if you're just starting out, you have to experiment, but that's a tricky question. Personally, I would not release it under one name. So I would probably, do something different, but I would say stick to one genre and, try releasing music in that's my opinion.
Okay.
I think we would, for example, a lot of bands do try out all kinds of stuff. Even if you take the Eagles all the way there, started off country, became, Americana folk, and then whatever became American rock. And so I think even for us, right, the way the Easy Wandling sound was, 4 years ago, it was very Norah Jonesy kind of, breezy music. And the latest single was Making My Move. And that again, like we heard, it really went off. We got some crazy traction for that. And our fans still know that it's Easy Wandlings. They love it. They dig it. So we are in a space where we can tomorrow release a completely bossa album or an Arabic album, anything. We want to be that, and we can still be the Easy Wandlings, and our fans would still like us for that. So if you can carefully craft that and build that in your brand, then good for you. Because tomorrow, if Tom Misch comes out with a completely bossa nova album, I will listen to it, and I'm sure people who listen to it his music won't be surprised, and they will not,
Yeah.
because that is him. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he released a bossa nova album.
Yeah.
You know it first. Okay.
Yeah, I think it's difficult. It's a difficult question in the sense of the solution, because if, like he said, if you can manage a sound
Yeah.
and then you're genre hopping within that sound, and even if you suddenly put out like a metal album and you can hear Pratika's vocals on it, then that's
It's so
cool.
easy,
Then you've
yeah.
succeeded, and you're not really going to lose too much. And we're trying to have fun with this, man. I mean, we're trying to be serious with the marketing, and like, yes, we want people to listen, but at the end of the day, the thing that some of us tend to forget in this crazy marketing and understanding is that we're actually doing this for fun. I mean, I love playing music. I love trying out different genres, and if I had to enjoy it while it lasts, different versions of the same kind of style, I'd go nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I even like what Foo Fighters, they just
Yeah.
they did DGs. I mean, they
Yeah.
did a disco album. I mean, those are really cool, and that's how I think you should do it. Don't take yourself too seriously. Have fun and do it well, and that's what.
Okay, on that note, I think we can conclude today's session. Thank you so much to our lovely panelists. Whoever's listening,
Thank you for
follow-
having us.
Yeah, follow
Thank you so much.
everybody on social media. Sign up for Tushar's newsletter as well. And thank you, Sutrekna ma'am, for having all of us today. So over to you, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you very much. A fascinating panel, I think. Thank you, Radhika, Darren, Tushar, Sarah, and Sharad for joining us. And I'm sure all of you know that music is not behind making the music alone by the end of the day, right? And marketing and promotion, everything that goes